Hey everybody, Kit Merker from Plainsight here, and I'm very excited to welcome the newest addition to our team, Jonathan Simkins, who's just joined us as COO and CFO here at Plainsight. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Kit. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be kind of cool for us to get on together and talk a little bit about your perspective on the company and your background, kind of introduce you to our world here, and share a little bit about what we've been doing since you came on board. So I guess to get started, maybe just tell us and tell everyone here about why Plainsight? Why are you excited about Plainsight, and why'd you make this move?
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on at Plainsight. I'll be remiss if I didn't also mention OpenFilter. Was a big draw for me. I have a deep background in open source. I used to be CFO of Canonical, which produces Ubuntu, which is pretty sure most people would agree the most popular Linux in the world.
Absolutely.
And even prior to Canonical, I spearheaded open source initiatives at other tech startups that I've been a senior leader for. So that was a big draw. I think OpenFilter itself is a very unique asset out in the community. You know, you see other projects and they're kind of Me Too's and they're forks of other things, and they don't add a lot of value. I don't see anything else that really has the same functionality as OpenFilter. So that was an exciting asset. Otherwise, computer vision being such a huge and mature part of the AI market, which, you know, everyone's talking about, and I don't see a lot of startups that aren't AI focused at this point. It really lacks that infrastructure layer. And I think your background with Kubernetes and my background at Ubuntu, you know, we are, I think, both infrastructure software type people, and this market's screaming for a real infrastructure solution, which does not exist, you know, as of right now. And I think it's what we're building here, and I think it's super exciting. And I'm looking forward to kind of rolling that standard out and being part of that team that the whole industry standardizes on.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting point around open source and infrastructure. And I know you recently, just departed a company that you sold, CoSci, which is in the cybersecurity space, which congratulations on that. And exciting to have you join us after that amazing run there. What do you think about the sort of threats or risks of AI, and especially as we move from, I would say, kind of the experimentation phase to the production phase in the industry? What should some people be thinking about if they're looking at adopting infrastructure for computer vision or for AI broadly? What would you say?
That's a tough question, because it's not a simple answer. There's the way I would think about the risk in the space is it breaks up into a lot of major buckets. Some are the traditional cybersecurity type issues, whether it's effectively the kind of the new flavor of a man in the middle or an injection attack. It's basically the same sort of underlying philosophy behind those threats. There's kind of a new threat on the content side and the training side. You didn't really have the issue of like data poisoning when you're training a model that in previous iterations of the tech industry and other types of broad software categories. So that's a new and interesting one too, which I would view as a cybersecurity issue, because again, you can inject malicious data into those training pools. And then on the flip side, you know, you have issues with hallucination, people over relying maybe on over trusting what their chatbot's telling them, because it can build trust quite quickly and it is very impressive. And then people kind of overlook the hallucinations and don't double check the output. And that's more of a people risk, and there's a whole category there. And then finally, I think the biggest sort of fundamental risk in terms of threatening the technology and the subsector of the industry as a whole is more the cost risk. These things can spin out of control quite quickly. You know, people talk about training new models and the massive investment that goes into that, but that can be more of a one-time investment that you can kind of, as a finance person, ring fence and be like, okay, you know, we have a business case, we're going to make the investment. But what I'm more concerned about is the operating costs, like the inference side of it, where, okay, I'm using, you know, OpenAI's latest and greatest, or Anthropic's latest and greatest, or whatever I prefer. And I have it in production in my enterprise, and that bill is spinning up. And, you know, it's driving up electricity costs. It's driving up, you know, data center real estate costs. The demand is so high. But I think there's a lot of, given how new and how rapidly evolving it is, there's a lot of inefficiency in the tech stack right now, and it's inevitable that cost pressures will come. You know, the boom gold rush days will end at some point, and things will have to get reasonable in terms of the impact to the P&L. And so I think people who are investing on not necessarily having the bleeding edge in terms of, hey, this thing can pass bar exams in 49 states or something like that, but just really, hey, this thing delivers practical outcomes at a reasonable price, and really being efficient on the code side, on the compute side, on the, you know, electric bill side, on the AC bill side, to really deliver practical outcomes for businesses and end users, you know, not the kind of AI scientists kind of at the top of the stack who kind of have, at this point, unlimited budgets to do their experiments.
Yeah, but it's, you know, as you talk about the operational efficiency, the financial efficiency. I mean, we're hearing from customers all the time that this is what they're looking for. Is they're seeing, they want to see an ROI, they want to see efficiency, they want to see the gains, and it doesn't really make sense to adopt AI without having the framework in place to ensure that you're going to have, you know, success, which is so important. And you know, when I wanted to maybe think about from your background, you know, you've done quite a bit of different stuff, actually, right? You started off in investment banking. You've been, you know, CEO, you've been an analyst, you've been a CFO, all these different roles. And I kind of, you know, for Plainsight, as we're trying to, you know, really establish ourselves as a leader in this space, really bring a software infrastructure and open source and something that scales and provides a ton of value to enterprises. How do you kind of connect the dots for us? Like, how does this fit into your path forward, and how do you see kind of things unfolding for Plainsight as we prepare for scale?
Yeah, I think, and this is another, I mean, kind of answers your earlier question too, what attracted me to this position. But I've always been an operator. I like to build, I like to execute. Even as an investment banker, which is more of an advisory career track, the part of that job I enjoyed was getting deals done, doing the hard work, executing. You know, as I moved up and it became more of a sales role, like I became less interested, and I decided to take my career elsewhere. So what I find difficult to fix as an individual contributor, as a leader, is issues with, you know, market demand. You know, you can't make people need your product. It's really hard to fix bad product, bad technology. It's not an easy thing to do. But what I love to do is help companies scale where the demand is there. The core tech is good. It might not be perfect, and there might be some kind of more product work to do, but the fundamental kind of engineering that's underpinning it is in a good place. And that's kind of all the assets Plainsight has. So this is a perfect job for me in terms of what I'm best at, which is there's a huge demand for what Plainsight's doing. The fundamental solution at Plainsight, in my opinion, is the best in the market technically. And what Plainsight needs help with is meeting that demand and putting those two things together. That's where I feel like I shine and where I get excited and it's fun for me. So yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not in early conversations here in this role, like, you know, oh no, our pipeline is empty. How are we gonna, you know, invest a bunch in demand gen and fill it up and try and convince people that this product needs to exist? It's hey, how do we prioritize all these demos and all these sales meetings and all these implementations, because we can't meet that demand today. So, you know, that's a fun thing to do. And I think especially in this market where a lot of other tech companies are kind of scaling back their resources, it's a fun place to be, where we're building and growing and hiring, and that we can it's a lot easier to pick up talent, I would say, right now, which is something we need at Plainsight, than it was, you know, 5 years ago, or kind of at the start of the COVID pandemic, where there was a boom in hiring. You know, it was impossible to find good people because, you know, 20 other companies wanted that same person too. So yeah, it's I think a lot of things, both macro and inside the company, are aligned, where it's a super fun role.
Yeah, exactly. The scaling to meet demand is definitely the high class problem that we all strive for. And it is exciting. Yeah, and actually, to that point, I know that there's, you know, we can't disclose too much about customers specifically, but in terms of the use cases in industry, you know, different industries and verticals that we are serving, I mean, this is you and I are both infrastructure guys, as we mentioned, right? We want to be across and agnostic to industry and build general purpose software and AI systems. But what use cases or what industry verticals, maybe just kind of share what has been interesting to you or you think is the most potential for us? What are some of the areas that you've been either surprised by or excited about in terms of end customer use cases?
Yeah, I think that's where things have been really interesting. A lot of other, as you mentioned, I've worked at many tech companies, so have you in your career so far. And you do kind of get those repeat verticals where there's a certain set of industries that generally are earlier adopters and first movers when it comes to buying new technology products. One of the things I've found most interesting about this role so far is the diversity and how many kind of like what would normally be like a very late adopter for your typical tech products, are interested in computer vision because of kind of what computer vision could do that, a CRM system can't do, or an ERP system can't do, or, Kubernetes, a containerization, a virtualization. All those systems have very specific buyers and users. So the things that are like most interesting for me personally, as I mentioned, I have an affinity for operations, is more on the kind of older school side of the economy. We've had some really interesting conversations with kind of the earliest type of industry, agriculture, a lot of industrial stuff, but industrial people are struggling to fill certain types of roles. They're not skilled, machinists, where people want those jobs. They're willing to put in the time to train and apprenticeship and learn and add those skills because it comes with being a skilled job comes with a bigger paycheck. But you need basic, safety monitors and security people. And it's hard to, that's a joke in the movies you and I watched as kids. You always had the security guard with the newspaper over his face, instead of watching all the screens. Like, there just never have been fun jobs and never will be. And computers can do that kind of work really well. So yeah, it's just nice that it's not the normal, like, financial services, other software companies, telecoms and companies like that on the customer list. But it's like, hey, I'm operating this massive factory and I need cameras to tell if the machine's about to break down because the maintenance guys can't be patrolling the floor all day because they need to actually fix the things. So, and I need to watch this door and make sure that somebody doesn't leave it open because it's a big security risk. And I need to count, this cattle moving past this station and just really kind of things you don't often get to play with when you're not, your core product is like an insurance application front end or something like that, where you have a very specific vertical and then that's it. So, and I think, as you mentioned, that's one of the reasons why I think both of us like the infrastructure side, because you get that diversity of use case and it pushes you and it makes it harder because you can't just be like, well, this works for one type of application and we can optimize for that and that's it. So it definitely increases the degree of difficulty, which again makes the job harder and therefore more interesting.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I guess just a couple final thoughts before we wrap up. So maybe talk a little bit about the culture you've seen at Plainsight and the culture we're building. Have you? How would you? Every company is different and has different characteristics. I'd be curious to kind of get your early impressions of Plainsight as a company, especially as we're thinking about hiring and people who might be interested to join us. What could they expect if they come into Plainsight? This is good feedback for me, right? Is to learn how the company's running.
Yeah. Well, I'd say the first thing I'd call out is the excitement. Like, everyone who works here is very interested in the core product. It's not just a good job, like, hey, I'm doing this engineering job. It's sort of, I don't really get why we're doing it, or I don't understand the industry that buys the product, but it has a good paycheck. And, I'm a DevOps person or I'm a front end engineer and they need front end work to be done. So, I've worked at places like that and they have some challenges on the motivation side and the energy side and like meeting deadlines because people don't really want to work at, 8 p.m. or on a Saturday because it's exciting stuff. But it's not the only company I've ever worked with that, but you can definitely feel the energy and everyone is like very excited about the actual core technology we're building here. which it just helps tremendously when we want to push the envelope and be like, hey, let's do something amazing for our customers. Let's deliver features that no one saw coming, and let's deliver them quickly and to really high quality because everyone's excited. And it extends beyond just, being a tech company. Obviously, engineering is a big part of the headcount and a big part of the investment and the kind of cultural core of the company. But because of that excitement, it extends to everyone else that I've worked with so far. And in that, it's not just it's fun to be an engineer here and everyone else doesn't feel that same excitement. All the other parts of the business are all equally excited. And I think that's one of the privileges of working when you are kind of on the bleeding edge and you're innovating and it is a new kind of technology category that you're building versus being like a me too and like, hey, there's been accounting software for decades and we're just going to make a better accounting software, which there's plenty of room for that work too. But it's hard for people to get super excited about that versus something where it's like, this didn't exist last week. What we just built is V1. And someone will come along and maybe make a better version of it 10 years from now. Hopefully we don't create that opportunity because we don't get lazy, but that energy is super infectious and super fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, for people out there who want to learn more about Plainsight, check out plainsight.ai, and also OpenFilter, our open source project with the universal abstraction for computer vision applications, is at openfilter.io, and that has links to the GitHub repo and all kinds of other cool stuff. And Jonathan, you're on LinkedIn, so people can find you there, and so am I. And you can find me there as well. Anyway, thanks for chatting today, and let's get back to work. Welcome to the team.
Thank you, Kit. Glad to be here.